I sent the pulse at 0314 ship standard, and for 11 seconds the void gave nothing back. That should have been my answer. Every object in space returns. Something. Mass shadow, thermal bloom, albedo scatter. Even a cold rock 3 kilometers across gives the array a shape to work with. Sat at bearing 7 rho naught gave me geometry that rewrote itself each time I sampled it. First pass, 2.1 kilometers bow to stern. Second pass, 6. 4. Third pass. The array returned a length that my console flagged as a unit error and refused to display. I cleared the flag manually. The number was 19.7 kilometers. I sat with that for a moment. Laceome. That was Primus Node Verath. His voice spread thin across the communion link the way it gets when he is genuinely unsettled, and trying not to show it. Your readings are corrupting the collective pool. Filter before you share. I am not filtering, Primus. I am reporting what the array returns. A pause. Around us, 3,400 node ships held formation in a sphere 200 kilometers across, the standard cataloging envelope we use for anomalous contacts. I could feel all of them the way you feel your own fingers, dimly, peripherally, but certainly there. The Veth Communion does not think alone. We have not thought alone in 11,000 years. The weight of 400 minds at the edge of my awareness was as natural to me as breathing. The object sat at the center of the sphere. It was not moving. It had not moved in the 14 hours since the deep rim relay at Jovan Station flagged it as a navigational hazard. No transponder signal. No emission signature. Hull geometry. What little geometry the passive array could resolve. That matched nothing in the Communion's archive of 7 million cataloged vessel types. The archive goes back 40,000 years. It has a file for everything. It did not have a file for this. Command we expand the containment envelope, I said, until we have a firm reading on mass and negative. Verath's voice was steadier now. Decided. We run a full active scan. All nodes contribute. Maximum resolution. Whatever that thing is, we're going to know it in the next 60 seconds. I want to be clear about what happened next, because I have told this account 4 times now to 4 different communion councils, and I will keep telling it until someone believes me or until there is no one left to tell, I said. Primus, I recommend we do not. He said. Laceome, transmit the pulse. I transmitted the pulse. The active scan uses the resonance array of every contributing node ship simultaneously. 3,400 ships. Combined pulse is not a radio signal or a laser ping. It is a structured wave of information, question posed in frequencies that can read hull composition, internal architecture, power plant type, crew biology, weapon port configuration, all of it in one transmission. We have used it to catalog warships, derelict stations, alien constructs of every description. We have used it on things that were alive and aware, and it has never once been answered. The object answered. Not immediately. For 3 seconds after our pulse reached it, nothing changed. I watched my console. The array was still trying to resolve the hull geometry, still returning that cascading length figure that my software kept flagging. 19.7 kilometers. I had stopped clearing the flag. I was staring at the number when the return signal hit. It came back on our own frequency. Structured. Organized. Not a reflection, a response. And the information encoded in it was not a vessel registry or a crew manifest. It was a catalog of us. Hull composition of every node ship in the formation. Internal architecture. Power plant type. Biology. The Communion's neural link physiologies, described in precise anatomical notation. Weapon port configuration on every ship we had. All of it, read and return to us in the 3 seconds between our pulse going out and the response arriving. It had scanned us faster than we had scanned it. Primus, I see it. Verath's voice had gone very quiet. All nodes maintain formation. Do not. The object's running lights came on. Not a few of them, all of them. A cascade of amber points spreading from the bow aft across 7 kilometers of hull, and the hull in that light was not what the passive array had suggested. It was not corroded or collapsed. It was intact. Every plate seated, every seam tight. The whole vast length of it catching the light of the local star and throwing it back without apology. The geometry was ancient. Nothing built in the last 10,000 years uses those hull angles, those proportions, that particular ratio of weapon port to hull plate. that I recognized from deep archive records as belonging to a construction philosophy that dates the current human expansion by a margin no one in the communion had ever thought worth worrying about. Pre-expansion, pre-contact, pre-everything we had a file for. The array resolved its length one final time and stopped revising. 19.7 kilometers mass, the equivalent of a small moon. Weapon port count, 140, distributed along the hull in a pattern I had never seen. Pattern optimized for simultaneous fire across all vectors at once. My hands were not steady when I noted that figure. What happened over the next 11 minutes? I am recording as accurately as I can, but I want to be honest. I experienced some of it through the communion link, and the link was degrading by the time the third phase began. And what I experienced through a degrading link is not the same as direct perception. I will tell you what I know, and I will tell you where I am less certain. The ship. I am going to call it a ship, though the communion archive uses the notation unknown custodian class hull pre-register. The ship began running its own systems in sequence, not all at once. Methodically, in order, the way you check a room before you enter it. Sensor arrays first, then propulsion, then, and this is the part I find hardest to describe without sounding like I have lost my reason, then, something in its deep interior that the array read as an active biological interface protocol, as though it were asking, is anyone aboard who should be informed of this? There was no one aboard. It had been alone for a very long time. Primus Verath ordered containment waves, all three, 400 node ships, transmit simultaneously, on suppression frequencies we use for rogue constructs. Frequencies that disrupt power plant function, that scramble navigational systems, that have never failed to immobilize a vessel of any size we have encountered in 11,000 years of communion expansion. The ship's hull registered the suppression wave. I watched the array. I watched it register the wave, process it, and add it to the catalog it was already building of us. Then it answered the suppression wave the same way it had answered our scan, information. A return transmission that described our suppression frequency in precise engineering notation, annotated with what I can only characterize as a correction, not a threat, a correction. As though our suppression wave had contained a mathematical error and it was returning the amended version. First node ship went silent at minute 4, not destroyed, silent. Its resonance linked to the communion simply ceased. One moment I could feel it at the edge of my awareness. Observation node 12, a crew of 40, stationed at bearing 7 rho naught plus 30. And the next moment that particular finger was simply gone. No pain, no distress signal, no explosion registered on the array. The ship had returned our scan to the node ship in question, and the node ship's resonance array, the same array that binds us together into a single mind across 3,400 hulls, had received that return and had gone quiet. I found out later, alone, with access to the logs from the surviving systems, that the return signal the ship sent to Observation Node 12 was a perfect mirror of the node ship's own resonance output. Not a jamming signal, a mirror. The array had received itself, and finding no external signal to distinguish from its own output, had ceased transmitting. 7 node ships went silent in the next 3 minutes. Then 190 more in a single pulse at minute 7. I was still on the communion link. I felt each one go. The communion does not have a word for what it is to feel 237 minds go dark in sequence, because in 11,000 years it has never happened. We have a word for the silence between stars. We do not have a word for this. I am going to say it felt like losing fingers, but that is not right. Because fingers are peripheral, and these were not peripheral. These were the texture of thought itself, going smooth. Verath ordered retreat at minute 9. The ship did not pursue. I want to be clear about that. It did not follow the retreating node ships. It did not fire. It had 1,140 weapon ports, and it used none of them. It simply continued its systematic scan return protocol, responding to each node ship's resonance signature, with that ship's own signal, mirrored and precise. And the node ships that received the mirror went silent, and the ones that did not receive it yet were moving, and some of them made it far enough that the signal did not reach them. And those ones are still alive. 200 of them. Out of down 400. I know that figure because I counted them afterward, alone, in the silence. I am Communion Lace Serathome, and I am writing this account in what I believe is the 11th hour after contact, though I am not entirely certain of the time, because my internal chronometer is calibrated by the Communion link, and the Communion link it goes on, and I have had to fall back on the ship's independent clock, which I have not used since my training rotation 40 years ago. I am the last node still connected to the Communion archive. Not connected. I am the only node. There is no communion anymore in the sense that has meaning. There are 200 surviving crews on 200 surviving ships, and none of them can feel each other, and none of them can feel me. And what we are now I do not have language for, because our language was built inside a mind that is no longer there. The ship finished its response protocol at minute 11. I watched it on the array. I watched its systems complete their sequence in reverse order, biological interface protocol first, then propulsion to standby, then sensor arrays to passive, and then its running lights went off in the same cascade they had come on, bow to stern, amber points going dark one by one across 19.7 kilometers until the void was as empty as it had been at 0314. I transmitted on every frequency I have access to. I used the Communion's emergency protocols and the pre-contact neutral frequencies, and 3 frequencies that are so old they are listed in our archive as historical, believed inactive. I told it who I was. I told it what it had done. I asked it what it was. It did not answer. I do not think it was ignoring me. I think, and this is the part the 4 councils have found hardest to accept, I think it completed what it understood the interaction to be. We sent it a signal. It sent the signal back. That was, from its perspective, the end of the exchange. It was built to respond to contact, to answer when spoken to make certain that whatever spoke to it understood what it had spoken to. We understood. The archive has a notation for it now. I wrote the entry myself because there was no one else left to write it. Pre-register custodian class. Believed dormant. Activation trigger. Active resonance scan. Response behavior. Full systemic assessment. Mirror return protocol. Non-hostile engagement. Non-hostile. That is the word I used. I used it because it is accurate and because I needed it to be accurate. Because if what happened to 3,200 minds is the hostile version, I do not want to be in the same universe as the hostile version. The ship's passive array is still out there. I can see it on my console, a faint return, at the edge of sensor range, moving away at a velocity that should not be possible for a mass that large. It is not accelerating. It was already moving at that velocity when I first picked it up again after the lights went out, as though it had always been moving at that velocity and had merely paused here for a moment to respond to a question, the way you might stop on a path to answer someone who calls your name, and then continue walking because you were going somewhere, and the question has been answered, and there is no reason to stay. It will be out of sensor range in approximately 40 minutes. I am going to watch it until it is gone. I do not know what else to do. Heck, I was part of a mind that had 3,400 bodies, and now I am one body with one mind, and the silence is enormous, and I am going to watch it until it goes, because it is the only thing in this void that I know the shape of. And when it is gone, the void will be just void, and I will have to learn, alone, what that means. At 0314 I sent a pulse into the dark. Something very old sent it back. We should not have asked.